I want to thank you guys first off for coming out here. Like, it's Saturday morning. It's freaking cold. I appreciate it. I put this event together to get 25, 30 people in a room, test out the room, test out the space, test out my planning ability, and try to bring something to you guys that you guys can appreciate. Through the podcast, we've done a lot of events, and a lot of events like this, a lot of networking, a lot of presentations in the city. Part of my motivation in putting this room together was to do more stuff out here in the suburbs. But I'm talking to some of you guys. You guys are coming from city and suburbs and far south, so thank you. That was not. I was expecting just to draw on everyone from Bloomingdale and Roselle, so I was wrong on that. So, but yeah, I am going to. The agenda here really was come in here and network for half hour. I'm going to talk to you guys for 15, 20 minutes, 25 minutes. I'm going to talk to you guys today about leasing, new laws, stuff like that. But when we wrap up Q&A, if there's anything you want to go deeper into or anything outside of leasing, I'm open to talk about anything. And if it's something I can answer, maybe someone else in the room can answer too. So I definitely will not say I am the smartest person in the room. So cool. Any questions? All right. Awesome. Awesome. All right. So for anyone that doesn't know who I'm local here. I grew up next town over in Addison. Married. It'll be 13 years Monday. So father of two. I live in St. Charles. I've been in real estate full-time since 2003. The only other thing I've done outside of real estate, outside of my high school type jobs, was logistics, trucking. I was in that for a while. Between 08 and 18, we did 482 BRRRR strategy type properties when the market crashed. Right now, we buy and hold industrial properties. We still have some residential properties as well, too. I'm in the mode right now where I want to buy as many single-family homes in DuPage, Kane County right now. It's kind of like where my mind's at, because I think there's a huge value in the next 10 years for multiple different reasons, if anyone's curious to hear later. We got the opportunity to be on a reality TV show. It was the scariest thing ever, because I was afraid they're going to tear me apart. And I didn't say much. My family always makes fun of me. Manager broker here at GC Realty. We have 30 agents now. We've leased about 5,000 units and managed over 3,500 over the years. We're in year 20. You know, what really qualifies me to be here, what qualifies me to be on the podcast, motivation for starting in the podcast, is I've messed up way more than you guys. I always say, I've messed up, I've made $1,000 mistakes. And you do that math, it's $1 million in expenses. So I've always had the personality of figuring it out. I've always said, maybe it's just the confidence. So no different for this meeting. I said, all right, I got to throw this first event. If I try to figure out the plan, I said, let's pick the date. Let's put it on the calendar, send out that first invite, and then we'll figure it all out. And we'll kind of back into it. And then kind of put a process together for future events. So that's kind of my mentality, and it's caused me to mess up a lot. But it's also caused me to take on opportunities that I probably wouldn't have if I was more conservative, or get wins. Also, we're going to talk leasing today, 245 units. We've been trailing up, but we're going to probably hit about 500 units that we'll rent out this year. So leasing is such a crucial part of the process. One, because our clients either hire us for manage and we lease it, or they hire us to lease only and we lease it. So we put a lot of focus in recent years on the technology. We'll talk about some of that stuff today. But if you get the leasing part right, the rest of it's so much easier. I think anyone that's not gotten it right can agree on that. What we'll cover today, I'm going to go over briefly 5 or 6 topics: Immigrant Tenant Protection Act, accepting electronic payments, Illinois Security Deposit Act changes, which is something that I don't think is on anyone's radar, Illinois Electric Vehicle Charging Act, and Tenant Radon Protection Act. And then we'll talk about some scams that are out there. So these are all things outside of the scams are new to 2024, and just kind of good things. I'm going to go briefly over each today, and I have a QR code in here. Now, you guys don't have to do it. What I'll end up doing is I'll email this out to you guys and have the QR codes, and I'll make sure I get that out to you by Monday. All right, has anyone heard of this yet? The immigration status is being protected. Is on everyone's radar? So as of January 1st, this is new. This is added to the Human Acts, right? So you can't discriminate. If someone comes and says, hey, I'm from Ukraine and I don't have a driver's license, you can't just say, hey, because you're from Ukraine and you don't have a driver's license, I can't rent you. We get, right now there's an influx of immigrants from South America, Central America. You can't just say, hey, listen, because you don't have the proper documentation that I would get from a guy that lives in Bloomingdale, I can't rent to you. So now you can put them through a series of other type of things that fit your criteria, maybe your how much you require, maybe your time on job, stuff like that. There's different ways that you can work with that. I'll give I'm not an attorney. I'm just someone that does this. And if you guys have more detailed questions, make sure you do talk to your attorney about some of this stuff. But about how to properly disqualify people to work around some of this stuff. But as far as the Human Rights Act goes, the things you got to be careful of, no different than last year when it became the law in Chicago or in Illinois about Section 8. You couldn't just say no Section 8. And it's similar with this. And this was something that was starting to happen last year more and more. You actually see ads, must have proper citizenship, must have proper documentation, all that stuff. And I think that was some of the run-up of how we ended up here with this. So, the United States has allowed, I think it was some crazy, like 5 million immigrants into the United States, giving them the right to work, but they don't have all the proper documentation. That's something that you guys gotta look out for. I know we are getting 2 or 3 of them a week right now as far as what we're seeing. So during the screening process, the landlord PMs just have avoid asking for it. If there's other stuff to verify. I don't know how this works, but I know we had one last week that they're not even a citizen, but they have a credit card or they have a banking card. They have a bank set up. So banks are allowing them to set up bank accounts even as well. So there's different ways you could go about verifying who they are, make sure they're legit. I know I talk to people and they're like, oh, I know they're just going to leave in the middle of the night. It's like, it's probably not what's going to happen. So, but if that's what you're worried about, get the banking information, just whatever you need to help you feel better that like they're not going to run up. And consequences of noncompliance are civil rights and fair housing. So has anyone ever gotten in trouble for fair housing? Has anyone ever accused of being racist or discriminatory or anything like that?
I had a friend go through it.
Okay, it's horrible. It is guilty to proven innocent. I had one time, the only time we ever had to like defend one, it was someone it's always usually the applicant that gets denied. So that's another kind of little tip there. Even the people that you're not approving, make sure you provide them the proper process, the feeling, they're going to leave there. Maybe they spent $60 on an application fee. Like just make sure that you're not creating enemies in that sense as kind of a side tip. But for me, the one case that we ever had was tenant got denied, and it wasn't even she got denied, just someone beat her to the process. She was too slow to get the documentation, and we got someone else approved first. And she said that we're discriminatory against Section 8. Now, I had on that block, in that neighborhood, it was in South Deering and the south side, we had 47 Section 8 tenants within like a mile radius of that tenant. But it took me 2 months, $1,000 in attorney bills, like to get that in front of the right person to show them like, look at this. But so it's a very tedious thing, and it's something that you never want to go through. And if you do, it's just a lot of work, and you gotta. The most innocent things can sometimes put you there, and you have to defend yourself. Accepted electronic payments. Has anyone heard about this one, where you are not allowed to force people to make electronic payments?
I used to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a lot of people like, you have to pay me Chase QuickPay, or you have to go through this portal. Up until 2024, when this started, there was always the rule that you had to, or there was a law that was passed a couple years ago that you had to allow a free option. You couldn't say, hey, if you drop it off in person, it's going to be $20. If you mail it, because a lot of people in the last 5 years started saying, I don't want to deal with checks. If you're going to give me a check, I'm going to charge you a $10 fee. I know a lot of HOAs were doing that with, if you're going to come pay your HOA in person, we're going to charge you a $25 fee. So a lot of those laws went into place saying, all right, you have to honor a free option. And now turned into, all right, I'll give you a free option, but you have to pay on Zelle. So now they've gone through in 2024, you have to, you can't make them make that. You have to give a free option. You can charge a person as long as there's some other free option. Landlords, you can't incentivize them though. So this is kind of what I'm seeing other people do. It's like, all right, you can't do that, but you can give them a maybe you set the rent $5 higher, and you say if you pay it, you get $5 discount for your rent if you pay electronically. Non-compliance is so this is not a violation of anything but the Consumer Fraud Act. Has anyone been in trouble for the Consumer Fraud Act? I haven't either, so I have no clue anything to talk about it. So, yeah, the Consumer Fraud and Deceptive Practices Act. So, and you don't have the opportunity to cure it. And what I mean by that is you can't be like, oh, I made the mistake, I'll change my process. It's wham bam. I'm pretty sure it comes just with a straight fine. So make sure you have a free option. Illinois Security Deposit Act. Does anyone even know this exists? All right, a lot of people do not know this even exists. So the headlines always get taken up by Chicago. The last couple of years, Cook County, Evanston's got their rules. But Illinois Security Deposit Act exists, and it was primary focus up until this year was more around properties that had 25 units in one place or more. So if you had a 25-unit building, you had to follow some of the rules. Now, a lot of the rules were along the lines of returning security deposits, and there was an interest that you had to pay. You had to meet guidelines, similar guidelines to probably Chicago, if I remember correctly. But now Illinois has changed that. They've reduced the threshold of what the size of landlord that you have to be. So you could be a landlord, I think it's anything over 2 units. Security deposit maximum increase, so you can only charge, I believe, up to 2 months security deposit. And this is everywhere. So this is Bloomingdale, Kane County, Will County, everywhere that we thought we got away from Cook County and Chicago laws from. The rules that we follow were 30 days, and you got to have everything documented by 30 days and return it by a certain point. That's same too now. And so you got 45 days, but by day 30 you have to have documentation and proof and receipts of what you're holding back. And then the other one part of this is you have to inform the tenants at least 30-day notice of any rent increases. In Chicago, that's 60 days. But in, I don't know, it's kind of bad business to do it any less than that, but just make sure you're giving them notice that the rent's going up. And the penalties for this is similar to Chicago. It's not as bad, but it's 2 times the security deposit plus attorney fees. Now, this really comes important when the attorneys start doing stuff with this, right? Everything in Chicago. Has anyone ever gotten busted with Chicago with a lease violation? All right, that's awesome. That's awesome. We've only had a couple over the years, but what that whole thing is led by attorneys. Has anyone ever Googled up City of Chicago security deposit? What do you get?
Well, you get a bunch of attorneys.
Yes, you get 2 pages of attorneys.
All they do is,
Yep.
is try to find people who are did something wrong in the lease with security deposit. And I think it goes even as far as when you're doing the lease, if you don't put the information of where it's being held, the bank entity that it's being held, if you miss their address, they have a whole system. I work for attorneys, so
Okay.
they have not this type of attorney, but they have a whole system of what to do to just go after landlords that are deficient.
Yeah, it's a whole industry. It's the ambulance chaser for landlords, I guess. It's kind of entertaining if you Google it. They're just looking for landlords to come tenants to come and say they didn't return my security deposit or whatnot. In Chicago, it sucks in the sense of you could literally hold back $100 for maybe carpet cleaning, right? Something very minimal. You think you're even being conservative because you don't want to push the into any gray area, and then all of a sudden you get a letter 3 months later from an attorney or a lawsuit basically being filed against you. That attorney might not, or that tenant might not even come back and try to argue it. They just go right to the attorney. So that's what Chicago's always been messy with when it comes to security deposit. And that's why when we started investing in Chicago in 2007-8, I said, I got this. I'm going to figure this out, all the details. I'm going to manage this. This is no problem. I'm going to pay the interest. I'll pay 5 cents more in interest. I'm not going to get in trouble. And it was, that first attorney letter you get, it's oh man, I did everything right, and I'm still got whacked for it ended up costing $45 or $5,500 in the end of the day. So, now fun. Go on.
I was just gonna say, have you seen out here in DuPage and Kane County the non-refundable move-in fees? It's becoming a thing.
No, I have not seen that yet.
It was there was a couple guys I was talking to in the city who do 80% of first month's rent as a non-refundable move-in fee.
Yeah.
Considered a security deposit.
Okay.
So your threshold in Chicago is less than half a month's rent for a move-in fee not to be considered a security deposit.
Okay.
Yeah, so you want,
Not an attorney.
so you got to say, so technically to follow the Chicago thing, you have to be at 49% for that. And in the suburbs, I've not seen that. Now, just one more thing. Last year, or it's actually 2 years ago now, the RTL came out for Cook County and has a lot of these same repercussions as the city of Chicago is. But the one difference, the big difference in Cook County, which covers all the suburban Cook County, is you have a right to cure. Almost everything in the Cook County ordinance gives you, I think it's 2 business days to cure. So if it's tenant can't go right to an attorney. A tenant has to come to you and say, hey, I don't think that $100 you took for a carpet, I don't think it's right because of this. And you have that opportunity now as a, if you want to, how you handle that situation could go case by case, but there's that right to cure, and there is a right to cure in the Illinois piece. So I guess point being, lower risk, no matter what the highest risk when it comes to security deposit laws is still in the city of Chicago. So, and we can talk more about security deposits if you guys, anyone wants to go down that rabbit hole in Chicago. These QR codes I'll send you out have all the details that you'll be able to check out as well too. Illinois Electric Vehicle Charging Act. Anyone hear this one? Hey, you're on top of your stuff, man. You nod your head every time. I like it.
He is.
So if we'll network around him afterwards. But this is I kind of compare this to if you have someone with disabilities and they need accommodations. Maybe they need bars around the toilet or bars in the shower. You can't tell them no. You can install them at their cost, and they have to put it back to it the way it was when they found it. This is now became something similar. So if you have a tenant that comes and rents your place and they got a Tesla, and they say, I need a charging station, and you can't say, no, it's not going to work here. We're just not going to rent to you. Now, they can say, listen, I'm going to put it in. You can say you got to follow the laws. You got to use a licensed contractor. You have to pay for it. You have to do it. Now, to me, there's a lot of good add value here, right? If they're going to do it by the book, they're going to do good work. You up your value a little. But a lot of people are not looking at it like that. They're looking at it more of a pain in the butt. HOAs, I don't know the exacts around HOAs, but with common area garages, there's some things that are going on with that. But all new properties have to have the charging capability as well too. That's something that passed as well. So if someone comes to you and they want to put a charger in there, you can't tell them no. You can tell them you can pay for it, and you could even. I think you can almost even tell them you have to use this contractor and you'll be good.
What about updating the electricity?
Yeah. So if it requires, say you don't have power to your garage, or you only have 2-phase and you need 3-phase for it, they'd be responsible for that entire thing. So
So then what stays with the building and what goes with that?
everything stays with the building at that point. So I used the comparison of someone that needs accommodations, but where you got to return it back. In this scenario, it would stay with the property.
So if it's a permanent fixture, just to avoid bad blood, you might as well go past with them, right? Because you're going to keep it for your next tenant.
Yeah, however you work that out. Yeah, I think it's where that industry is going. There's more and more and different players coming on. But yeah, so I think having that will never take away value from your property. And if you get them to flip the whole bill, you're allowed to do that. So it ends up being a negotiation if you want. But I know somebody that had this a couple weeks ago come up already, and what he ended up doing was, he said, I will split it with you, because they actually needed 2 hookups. There's a husband and wife. They both had Teslas, and he made him sign a 2-year lease or whatever. So he kind of tied it to, I'll put a little money into it. You're going to put. He had to run. It was similar to what you're just saying. He had to run something additional to the garage to get. It might have been another breaker or whatever, and so he covered that part of what the bill was going to be. They covered the actual equipment and all that stuff, and then he made him sign a 2-year lease just because he's like, if I'm going through all this, I don't want to deal with this for 2 more years. So, and it's the landlord's aesthetics and standards, so where it's located and so forth. All right, so I put this up here, and again, I'll send this out to you. But anyone that's following the podcast, every week we do this landlord weekly tip, and housing provider tip, I think we call it now. there's so much information in 30-second clips on here. And this are all things that either I've done wrong, I see other investors that I talk to, obviously I talk to tons of investors on a weekly basis, or things that are going on within our property management company. You know, I see things going on all the time that either mistakes we made or mistakes that tenants made or things that just went wrong that we had to deal with. So huge information here. We're actually going to put together like a little booklet of like the top 50 or whatever. So if you want a crash course on all the problems you'll encounter in the next 20 years, that's what it is. Tenant Radon Protection Act. Anyone else besides Sim hear this one? So this is one that went into effect 2024 as well too. So lead-based paint disclosures. You guys have worked with those in the past. This is now, you now have to disclose the radon piece. You have to have the radon disclosure as part of your lease packet. And this is all of Illinois. This is not limited anywhere else. So unless you're on the second floor unless you're higher than the second floor. So if you have a third floor flat or if you have a third floor condo apartment, you do not have to do it. For us, just so we make sure we don't miss it, we're just putting it in everything. So if you do have a third floor, and then I believe if you're ground floor, you got a garden unit as well too, you have to do it. So it's just anything above second floor. And you have to provide them the pamphlet as well too, or the brochure. So I know for us, and I know a lot of landlords just kind of make it part of their process for everything. Now, the other part of this, which I don't know, I've never seen this happen, where a tenant like wants to go and test for radon. If they do, they have to provide you the results. And I think that came from tenants would have tested things and then went right to court versus letting the landlord know where they could cure it. I've never heard of a landlord testing or a tenant testing it. I struggle enough trying to get them to test the smoke detectors, let alone going and running a test at their cost. So yeah. Scams. Anyone been scammed here?
Almost.
Almost? What was it?
Very good pay stub. Even like they had a phone number where I called the job and they like vouched. But then when I looked at the previous address, I went on the county records to see the actual owner of the property. Turns out it was for sale. I was able to reach the agent. You're the fourth person that's called because the pay stubs were legit and they even had a phone number for a job. So it was a realtor that was selling the listing or the house where the tenant was before that told me like, you're the fourth person that's called. This person never lived here. And she was very insistent. Like, oh, hey, you have an approval form? You have approval? And had I not called the agent, they would have got me good.
There's two big red flags there that you just said. The first one was, oh damn, I forgot what the first one is. The second one was they're persistent. So when they have this awesome application and they're really aggressive, that's the first. That's the second red flag. I forgot what the first thing is. House for sale. House for sale is the other one, because that's a really easy target. Because that's an easy story. Like, hey, I'm selling this house right now. I'm going to have all this cash, and it's like, oh, and you look at that house. They'll even have the story of like, I have all this equity and I'm going to sell it and I'll be fine. And so those are two red flags right there. We'll dive into that here in a second. Squatter issues. This is becoming a bigger and bigger problem with squatters, and it's happening in the suburbs as well too. It wasn't in our operation, but a guy went to his unit. He actually rented to a Cook County Housing Authority tenant in Hoffman Estates. So I was thinking about the story. And, the inspection process takes a few weeks. And he rented it out, and he didn't really go back for a couple weeks. And he went back just last week to check on, they had the inspection, and they're waiting for the approval and all that stuff. So, there's weeks here that are passing. And he went back to just kind of check on their day. And the place is fully furnished, and there are people living there. And it's a horrible pain in the butt. Now that tenant showed him a lease that they signed, and I don't never know where the story goes here. If the tenant's part of it or someone actually legitimately rented to him, and I don't know. I didn't. But either way, you have to find a way to get that person out, and you have either you get lucky and maybe the police will help you. In the city of Chicago, it's tough to get them to help you. In the suburbs, it's a little easier, but just make sure you have a place. You're kind of checking out your place every couple of days. handing out lockbox codes. I know some people are like, just go grab the code. I'll come after. You know, sometimes it's just the easier way, but especially if you're self-managing, you know, maybe not even leaving a lockbox on the property at all, or having, you know, I don't know if has anyone tried breaking a lockbox? We did it one day and we filmed it just for fun, and like we took like the what's supposed to be the toughest lockbox, and we took bolt cutters, and we were in that thing. We just beat it, and it was like a matter of like 12 seconds. So these lockboxes are all on your doors. I mean, you got the Realtor brand ones, like the Code Force and the Supras and all that stuff. Like those are a little more intense, but most of these lockboxes, you just clip them and you can just beat the heck out of it and have keys within a few minutes. So cameras or notices on the door. So there are scams out there where people will put a fake ad. Have you ever gotten a call like, hey, I saw your place on Zillow and it was like $900 or whatever, but you're really trying to rent it for $1,800. And then they give the code, and that's a different type of scam where they're trying to collect application fees and so forth. But one way to get around that is if you have on all our rentals, we have a sign on the front door saying, if you saw this on Craigslist or we have like if this, then this is a scam, please call this number right away. So we have a template that we put right on the front door of all our rentals, because a lot of times it is that person trying to get the code, and then they give these people the code, they go in there, they get the application fee and so forth. So right now, I heard this went up, but you can buy, it's kind of going along the lines of what you almost had. You could go buy documents, call it the underworld or whatever, for like $500, $1,000. And what you're getting is an entire story. You're getting the ID, you're getting the ID with your picture. You basically send in your Walgreens picture. Everyone get a passport, you're gonna take that other picture. You take that in there, someone gets you they take the license, they make the license, but it's not a real license. It's a license that's good enough that if you copy it and they upload it to you as the landlord, you wouldn't know. So one way you could do that, if you have any questions, you can always ask, maybe you met them out for the showing or something like that, or you're gonna meet them out the second time asking for a real license. So that's one way around that. The red flags, like it's a slam dunk. Like, oh my gosh, like it's too, we all learn from our parents, too good to be true, right? Like those are the moments in the rental world right now you have to stop and like, whoa, 800 credit score, selling a house, got $1 million equity, moving from Highland Park, like all these great stories. Works over here as a CEO, like all these crazy stories. And on the surface, it's like, this is everything I was hoping for. But that's where you gotta stop, and you gotta dig deeper into the red flags. And there's the funny thing is there's a lot of mistakes. So items on the payroll don't add up correctly, and missing logos. So a lot of these pay stubs are made fake, or the logos are wrong. Now, one thing you could do is, there's 5 or 6 big payroll providers out there. Paylocity, like one of these come in, and even if it does have the logo, you Google up what does a Paylocity pay stub look like? Because they're all the same. And if that's off, if that's wrong, if the logo's wrong, they change their logo every year to prevent scams. So that's something you can do around the logos. We've caught the math. So these people, as criminal as they are and as slick as they are, they still have bad math sometimes. So the stuff doesn't add up. It says so another red flag is the tenant, the pay stub that they give you says direct deposit, but the tenant reports maybe they don't have a bank account or they're between bank accounts. Let me tell you this. If the tenant is coming to a Cash App and they have $100,000 and they're like, that's a red flag. Like, I get paid, it's through my Cash App. Like, that's a red flag, all right? Story doesn't make logical sense sometimes. We had, what was it? The tenant was moving from it was a story around a house they're selling. It was a house in Michigan. The house was like $840,000. And they were moving to, what suburb was that? It was like a $1,200 like townhouse, C-class somewhere like in Willowbrook or something like that. It just didn't make sense. And their story is they wanted to move close to their job, but their job was like around Rosemont or something like that. It's like, there's $1 million, like $1,200 condos. Even if that was where you're going and maybe you want to save money or whatever, but a lot of times they say, I want to move closer to my job. And it's like, yeah, you just start doing you put in the thing. It's like, well, you're technically closer where you're at right now in Highland Park from your place, and now you're moving down to Cicero. Like, so the story just doesn't make sense sometimes, and you have to kind of drill into it. And the thing is, these scams that they're doing, they're pretty aggressive. You might ask them a question, and they're almost irritated. Like, man, I got 800 credit score. Like, why you gotta keep drilling me? So, but they're using someone's entire story, and it goes on LinkedIn, or it matches up, lines up even with like their LinkedIn story. So, we've got it where we have their name, everything. Like Donna Jones, that lives. The application says she lives in Michigan. She works for this company, and you go on LinkedIn, it says that. So, even reaching out to the people on LinkedIn if you think there's something fishy going on. Defensive, we talked about that. Will be overly accommodating and extra nice, but they just something doesn't add up. So again, you got to have your common sense stuff on there. I'll share this with you guys. I did a couple different articles on this. And went in more detail on this whole scam thing. It sucks because they move in and right away it's downhill from there. The other couple of things is if there's one person moving into a 5-bedroom house, that should be a red flag no matter what. But I see a lot of times that's what's happening. Now the thing about these scams, there's two people that are doing these scams. There's the people that legitimately they just can't get approved. So they're buying an identity because they think they can afford that $1,500 rent. They just can't get approved because whatever, maybe they had different evictions on their record or whatnot. So they're investing into be able to get into a place. And sometimes they'll move in and they might just be slow pay. So we've seen these investors or these types of tenants moving with investors where it's like they make it 6-7 months. And the reason you would not have approved them as is they probably would not make it long term. They might have money here, or they just have a record of messing up after a year, right? The person that files bankruptcy every 3 years. And the other person there is the people that are legitimately just trying to scam the system and get into a place because they don't want anything.
So, if you fall for one of them and somebody gets in there, what's your recourse?
You have to go through the eviction process at that point. And your risk for falling for one of these in Cook County obviously is way greater than DuPage County. The target, they're pretty strategic on how they target people as well too. They'll target the self-managers. They'll target the property managers if they've fallen for it. So we had one that happened, and this is how we kind of learned about it. We got burned by it. But then the influx of applications that came after that was crazy. And then we started just calling them out, and we invested in, we use a underwriting service called FindDigs. And now they've upgraded their system where we could put a Bank of America bank statement in, and it could tell the difference if it's fraudulent or not. And it's crazy. They showed us 2 Bank of America statements, the fake one and the real one. You couldn't tell by the blind eye. So it was kind of crazy. But yeah, you have to go through the eviction process. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I'm just curious, are there any consequences for these if you spot one of them? Is there a way to report them, or they're free to do this with someone else?
The database of bad tenants, I don't know if that exists yet, but it's always been a great idea. No, they go get it somewhere else. Now for us, in our property manager world, we'll circulate. I run a property manager best practices group, and we'll circulate hey, be careful for this name if it comes through an application. But yeah, no, it sucks. And they're usually repeat people. The person that we had, one of our scam ones that we got out, all of a sudden we got a call for property management 6 months later saying, hey, we put this tenant in there and they're not paying and she's not really getting back to us. Now, I don't know how it happened. I think we looked up her number or whatever, but we were able to figure out that this is the same person that was in, we're in. But the tenant didn't even realize the owner didn't realize they got scammed. So we started asking them, hey, share us this information. Tell us, did they tell you this? And they're like, yeah, they told us. I was like, yeah, this is what happened. So we had to explain that to them. But
So you can't, if somebody gets in there, it's like a stolen identity. I have no ability to press charges.
There's somebody in Naperville that they tried, not through us, but another landlord I know where he was pissed. Like he was like, I'm gonna nail her. I'm gonna make, like, we all get that, like, justice, right? You want that justice. He got Naperville police involved, and they just never are able to take it so far. And mostly, a lot of times you end up in a situation you don't even know who the person is living in your house. So you might be 2 months into it, they missed the first payment, or they're late on the first payment, they stop paying the second payment, and you think Sarah Jones living in your place, and it's not Sarah Jones. Like, you don't even have any clue who's living in your place right now. So you call the police and say, someone's fake's living in my house. They're like, who? And you start giving the information, and the information doesn't, the number that they originally applied for doesn't work. The number that of their job is no longer existent because that was a staged number, and they called it up. And that's another thing too. Your whole, if you're getting these are best practices whether you're trying to not have a scam or not, but make sure the resources and emergency contact, and you're kind of following up on all those and just kind of drilling in and seeing how real, or looking for red flags. The entire application process, which we won't go into today, and it's just all about, like, it's the guilty to proven innocent in our own way, in that sense. Like, you just got to look for the red flags until they're not there, and just ask questions. Has anyone read this book, The Road Less Stupid? Oh, it's a really good book. You guys should check this out. It's this guy, he's in his 70s now, but in the 80s downturn, he went from, like, being worth 200 million to, like, minus 100 million in, like, the 84 downturn. But the whole book about just kind of putting what we do in simplified terms. And his whole concept is, like, you don't have to be smart, you just have to not do dumb things. So his whole kind of, like, the way he looks back at success is, in his life, is that I just did a bunch of things that weren't stupid, and that's how I got to be where I was at. And we all make a lot of bad decisions, or we go with our guts, and it hurts us sometimes. Yeah, Keith Cunningham. It's a great book. It's pretty entertaining too, so I'll check it out. Anyone read this book? All right, good. So we got some Morgan Housel fans here. So he just came out with the second book as well too. I forget the name of it, but this is a great book. And I only read this book last year, and I think this is a great book that I wish I would have read 20 years ago. Very basic, kind of put some things in reality, but just a good kind of breakdown. We put this together as well too a few years ago, and just kind of a bunch of tips on self-managing. So obviously you'll be able to download this when you take it, but I think there's 15 or 16 kind of top things that we put into this, and there's a good chance you'll take one or two good points away from it, even if you are an awesome landlord already. You guys are all here around growth, and you guys want to be better, or you want to grow your own portfolio, but this is a great, anyone want to follow 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝘁 𝗗𝗲𝗃𝗲𝗹𝗁? All right, so I'm a big 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗁 fan, and he did this podcast on modern wisdom with Chris Williamson, and this is great. It's like 3 hours, but it really breaks down a lot of like, I don't know if common sense is the right word, but it's just a great 3 hours. Just kind of help internalize, like, your focus on where you want to be and where you're looking to go, and why you don't do things, and so forth. So, all right, back to don't do stupid things. Just create your own luck. Don't do stupid things. Bring value to others. So that's what we're here for today. My goal is to hopefully you guys will leave here one or two things and a T-shirt, and kind of open up the door for if there's any way we can help you in the future. Obviously, we help. We have the podcast that goes every week. We got stuff over here on our podcast website, which just the new website comes out next week. We have tons of resources on there with different calculators. We have networking. We have a link to, I think there's 30 different networking groups that meet around Chicago. If you haven't checked that out, it's good. But if you're not following the podcast yet, anyone not listen to the podcast? All right, good. Even if you weren't, you couldn't raise your hand at that point. But obviously, GC, we do property management and we do lease only. But I'm always here. Shay's always here. If you guys ever have questions, you guys know, anything I've helped you guys in the past. I've helped a handful of you guys in the past. Anything I can ever do to add value, guys, I'm here for you guys. So.